This is the Venerable Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche public seminar entitled Heart of Meditation 1, given in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. This is Talk 2, given on May 31st, 1979. This is a CTI custom remaster made May 2023.
Good evening. I'm glad to hear that our practice today went good, and that encourages me a lot in order to go further. It seems that basic sitting practice inspired by the shamatha discipline goes a long way. That to begin with, it allows us to become soft, gentle, and methodical, which also cuts through any resistance to working with ourselves and working with the Dharma and its world altogether, generally. It seems also necessary at that point the precision and the discipline goes along with what's known as trusting in the heart. And that trusting in the heart is a sense of non-aggression and a sense of openness as to you are willing to deal with phenomena world. The phenomena world is constantly demanding us and provoking occasionally passion, aggression, and ignorance of all kinds. So the basic idea being, if there's a trust in the heart, that we are our best friend, in order to do that, we have to give up a lot of things, holding back, and resistance to the practice of sitting and seeking for comfort so that you don't have to deal with the phenomena world. So there could be a completely giving in the world around us thoroughly and fully, which comes from a basic training of simple shamatha sitting practice meditation. However, we talk about advancing our journey to the Vajrayana level, but that advancement of the journey cannot take place unless there is that kind of trust in the heart. And the distrust or mistrust in the heart is based on the suspicion. To ourselves, sometimes thinking that we are not a worthwhile person. And sometimes we are shocked by ourselves, and sometimes we feel embarrassed about our own subconscious gossip and afraid to share that with anybody. And there's lots of hidden corners everywhere, and that could overcome by basic sense of connection with the practice along with the technique. In actual sitting practice situation, and also when the sitting practice is broken and begin to switch into a everyday life situation, and this transition could be regarded as a natural transition rather than switching on and off altogether. So when you stand up from your cushion, there could be a basic continuity of that steadiness, that freshness, still continuing. And one of the problems of carrying out awareness in a post-meditation practice is that looking for substitute and relief from the sitting practice of discipline. So there could be a continuity which brings about trust in the heart, because we begin to feel we are, whether we are sitting or on the cushion or not, we are capable of experiencing some continuity, so that practice begin to become a 24 hours work. We could say that kind of a mindfulness practice is somewhat narrow, because there are not any more rooms to play about indulgences of any kind, but on the other hand it is a joyful one, that the very earth we are standing on or sitting on, we are driving on, we're flying off, becomes your safu. So there is a hauntingly giant zafu exists, known as earth. Whether you're walking on it or doing anything else, shitting on it, pissing on it, relaxing on it, or whatever you do, that there is a giant zafu, and you are still practicing. And that seems to be one of the very important points, particularly in the Buddhist tradition, that whatever we do, there is always that earth that reminds you of the sanity and the solidity of the Buddha's wisdom is always there. Mindfulness usually takes place in a quick and sudden flashes of jerk that when you're wandering off, go back, you come back, and you know it's there, you're on earth. And that kind of constant jerk and shock could repeat 500 times a day throughout your life. So, if we begin to follow that particular process, we begin to develop that world around us is no longer hassle. And the world around us is an encouragement for our practice, completely, fully. That we don't have to fight against anything, but we just tune in. So one begin to discover greater world than purely world is constricted to a sitting place of your meditation hall alone. You might be talking to your customers, or you might be talking to your boss, or you might be making business deals. You might be eating food, drinking tea or coffee. You might be combing your hair. You might be going to the bathroom. Every activity what we might be doing, we still have to stand on this earth in order to do it. And in order to stand on earth properly is to have that kind of mindfulness happening. That earth is our reminder throughout whole life. And it becomes a delightful companion, and the notion of loneliness also becomes an interesting point there too. That you might feel alone, lonely, but at the same time you feel that you have a fundamental basic ground that you can refer to, and that is the precisely when the Buddha was asked that by somebody and said that, how do we know that you are enlightened? And he touched earth and says, this is my witness. I sat on this earth. So you have the mudra of earth witness posture came up. So that is the precisely how we could start our practice with sanity, which continues throughout everything what we do. And hopefully we could do that on the spot as we continue our lives. And you could start on right now. That very cushion you're sitting on, very floor you're sitting on, is this sanity that Buddha sat on. We are sharing the same earth, and you have it, if you're willing. And quite straightforward, and sometimes, most of the times, could be quite delightful. If you have any questions, you're welcome. Just a minute.
Is this up?
Yes.
The Indians thought that the heart is the mind. I was wondering if you'd teach us something about that.
Indians?
Indian Buddhists, Yogacharans.
Such as who?
The Yogacharans.
Yogacharans, yeah. Heart is mind, did you say?
Yeah.
Well, it seems to be the heart is that which experiences fundamental luminosity. That is the basic Yogacharan approach, which actually goes a long way until you have the Madhyamaka tradition. And that is some sense of a basic ground where when you have experienced a common connection, that heart is brilliant and also joyful. That is, we're talking about the connection with the basic alaya principle altogether, the storehouse of consciousness. And the fundamental of that is brilliant and luminous. And we are capable of experiencing sense perceptions, but we are not caught in it. Chitta concept, you know.
So our first ground is the Dharmadhatu?
Well, the luminous mind is a starting point, and that goes beyond non-conceptual basic storehouse consciousness, which is something slightly different than that of the Yogacharan experiences, which are connected with the Shunyata principle of the Madhyamaka principle. And beyond that, one begins to experience what's known as the Dharmakaya principle, and then beyond that, you experience the Dharmadhatu principle.
Thank you.
We have specific instructions for our practice. Could you say something of the kind of instructions we have for our everyday life, or the sort of effort we should apply?
Awareness, mindfulness. So the basic instruction is not to separate from sitting on the cushion to dealing with the rest of the life. Mindfulness, I think we should keep it very simple. Otherwise, obviously, it would get very complicated.
Okay.
Ça va?
What is the relationship of intelligence to heart? My question is prompted by my relationship with my sister, who is a Christian and who relates very deeply with the notion of heart, with a sort of fearless openness to other people and to experience. It doesn't seem to go quite as far as Buddhist openness, because there's some conceptual blockage, and it seems to me, and sort of relating to her, that that somehow intelligence isn't quite operating, and that she's taking too many things for granted, or starting off with too much preconception. And I was wondering if you could talk about the relation of intelligence, of criticalness with heart.
Well, as we discussed already, when there is a connection with the earth, that you begin to feel what can we say? Connection. Touching the ground. At the same time, when you feel things properly, and also when you begin to experience what's known as the individual salvation concept of Hinayana, the basic idea is that notion of aloneness we talked about. Individually, you have to work on your own earth. That the earth you're sitting on is not rented by anybody for you, but it is your payment. You rent it yourself. The parachute concept doesn't exist. When you're born, your placenta is taken away, which is a parachute. And finally, you landed on your earth, your mother's lap, and you're on earth without a placenta, and your belly button has been cut. So you're finally here on earth, very definitely. So that kind of idea that you're not be saved by any lofty gentlemen. So you're on your own in some sense. And because of that, you have to have some kind of intelligence as to how to conduct yourself fully, which is based on a discipline of how to drink your tea properly, and how to move your arms, how to walk, how to look, how to behave yourself. Very small, minute details, which comes from a mindfulness practice, that you do not become sloppy of your everyday life situations. You don't grant. You don't take a grant that everything is given to you, that everything is rented for you throughout the whole thing. But you have to cultivate, and everything has to become individual merit. That's what we call karma, individual merit. You have to earn it, you have to do it delicately, beautifully, and then you have it. But at the same time, you have to cherish that properly and fully. So it's more of an intelligent sense of detailed situations, and not so much of that you've been nursed throughout the whole thing, which probably is the differences between theism and non-theistic approach. That when you talk about it, you deserve certain things. It's not so much of that there is a red carpet all over the place, but it's a question of that you have to earn it, start from scratch. And that start from scratch itself is not necessarily a harsh one particularly, but it's no man's land. It's a neutral situation. So you have to make your own statement and how to settle down, and how to work, how to cultivate your relationship to your world. Everything what you do your very scarf that you're wearing on your neck has a relationship with your body. So scarf just doesn't come along and tie itself on your neck. You have to do it yourself, so everything becomes very precise and ordinary, but at the same time, in some sense, quite frightening. That every walk that we take, every speech that we utter, has its cause and effect possibilities, reflects our sanity and insanity at the same time. So that, and on the other hand, you begin to feel that you are the universal monarch, that you can command the entire world to organize an enlightened society, that because everything is caused by you, therefore you have the choice in that way. But on the other hand, if you made the wrong step, wrong approach, then not being mindful awareness, so then there is a problem, comes that way at the same time. So it's an interesting thing about individual salvation to begin with is very tricky, quite delicate.
Thank you.
You mentioned that you are your own best friend, which I find a terrifying thought. I feel I am a result of the deeds and actions that I have performed during my lifetime. Would you explain to me what you meant by the fact that you are able to comfort yourself? This has to do, I suppose, with the Puritan notion of making up for your past sins and so on. Could you clarify for me how one comforts oneself in that regard?
Well, maybe comfort is not a very good usage of word. We're not talking about that you have to develop your own cocoon so you can lie in it and make yourself comfortable. But you are your best friend, meaning that you have the best critical judgment and understanding of yourself. So at the same time, you have some ideas of how you can conduct yourself, go beyond that. And there will be some kind of natural mindfulness practice happening all the time. But I would like to make the whole thing quite clear here. The notion of a mindfulness is not necessarily of cutting oneself down all the time, having a negative attitude to oneself, but just simply seeing what it is all about, what you do, how you conduct yourself, very straightforward. A lot of these things sometimes come as a very positive situation, and sometimes it may be a critical and negative at the same time. But everything's clear and precise. Good, bad, positive, negative situation occurs to you all the time throughout your life situations that way. So it's not so much of providing comfort particularly. Comfort is not in the question particularly. So when we talk about a judgment in the theistic language that has punishment involved, which we are not talking about. When we talk about a judging, we are talking about a clear perception, like a new acquisition of your spectacles, that finally you begin to see the black and white and green and red are all well defined as you look with your new spectacle, if you can. So it's precision, and at the same time it comes some sense of a delight, which is not exactly comfort we're seeking particularly, but on the other hand, you could be completely out in the air. It could be quite raw because we begin to perceive so many sharp precisions everywhere, which could be problematic, but on the other hand, it becomes very real because you are not cheating yourself or others or in any situation at all. So it's a natural process that way. So then you can make friends with yourself because you are the best scout for yourself, best friend. So I think everything seems to be based on actually sitting practice itself.
Talking about our sitting practice, I was wondering, today as I was sitting, sometimes my mind raced on to the point in which I had trouble getting back to my breath. I was curious as to whether that kind of undisciplined sitting has any value at all, or is it just entertainment in the same sense as all entertainment is?
Well, there's a tremendous value for the very fact you said. Otherwise, you wouldn't discover anything about yourself at all. And to begin with, at the beginning, that's a good start. And you managed to tame your mind up to a certain extent. Always worthwhile. Absolutely always. Don't give up. Keep doing it.
Sir, you've talked a lot about the necessity for sitting and the importance of it. I wonder if you could comment on the importance of having a teacher or a guru and what one's relationship should be to that person.
Well, I was trying to talk about that later on towards the end of our journey here. And first of all, one have to understand the teaching before we talk about the teacher. So we are talking about the teaching at this point, and so one has to experience the teaching, and then you begin to experience the author of that particular teaching, which comes much later. So I would recommend you to sit more at this point and practice more, and then we see what we can do.
I had a question about some material that you talked about last night. You said that it was possible through sitting practice to simplify one's life and to begin to relate to everything as thought. And I wondered if you could be more precise as to what you mean by thought.
Thoughts. Did you find anything other than thoughts
Well,
in your life?
I don't know. It's sometimes, well, some things are that I experience, I would call thinking. Analyzing things, the kind of thought that's called discursive thought.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not sure what it means to say that everything we perceive is thought.
Well, would you say everything is a thinking?
In the sense that everything is some...
That goes on in your head?
Yeah.
Is thinking? Well, thinking is thought. That's linguistically true. You can look up in the dictionary. When you think a thought.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a tendency to separate the discursive, sort of semi-daydream is thought, but when you begin to have important ones, you begin to think something else, and that particular thought requires a new title, which is not true. They're all thinking. What else could it be?
I don't know.
Well, then there's something else which goes beyond thinking and non-thinking, non-thought, that is something else. I mean, you don't have any thoughts, so we have a lot of attempts for that too. But at this point, we should concentrate on that thought.
So that even strong emotional impulses, being drawn towards something or
That's
pushed
thought.
back, that
That's
is
thought.
all thinking.
Thought. So the whole idea is that any credentials of your emotions could be reduced into a purely thinking practice, so therefore you can sit. Otherwise you would have lots of VIPs visiting in your middle of your meditation, and you have to make them a special room for it, and you'll be too busy. So there's no dignitaries visiting you when you think. They're just common thoughts, like as much as just ripple in the water.
Thank you.
Thoughts.
You were discussing cultivating sanity in your everyday life. I was wondering if you would comment on what role Buddhist precepts would have in cultivating this sanity.
Well, I think basic disciplines that comes with basic precepts are a way to cut down thoughts. And having done that, then there is a reflection of because of a thought process of neurosis got through, therefore that is begin to reflect on our speech and our body altogether. So that is enlightened society.
If you were mindful in making decisions in your everyday life, might you come to other conclusions about activity other than what's prescribed in the precepts?
Such as what?
Situations that might lead you to behavior that is contradictory to what is prescribed in the precepts.
What could that be?
A situation where you might lie or steal.
Well, why should you do such thing? You mean you're talking about a Buddhist revolution?
Well, perhaps to no, I mean to for the benefit of some person. I can't think of an example offhand.
Well, basically, even in the ordinary situations, being genuine always pays much more than being devious. That's the Shambhala vision, if you have heard of that. And on the top of that, we have a Buddhist vision, which is to go along with what's been prescribed. And it could be quite literal, quite ordinary. I don't think there's any possible situations where you have to twist the logic particularly. Unless that we are starting a Buddhist revolution. And in such situations like that, well, if somebody is going to kill your teacher, and if the assassin asks you which room is your teacher, and you might say the otherwise. I mean, that's common sense. At that point, situation is quite obvious, and you will do that with anybody else. Trying to save somebody's life. Doesn't have to be particularly your teacher, necessarily. Which is an extreme situation, and requires some kind of intelligence with that. But apart from extreme cases like that, the basic situation is true and decent.
So one way to help yourself cultivate mindfulness in everyday life would be to follow the precepts.
I would say so, rather.
sometimes when I meditate, I begin to think more clearly, at least I think more clearly about some things that happened to me in the past. And I look back on situations where I feel negative or badly about the way I treated somebody or a situation I got into, and now I think, oh, it's much more clearer to me what I should have done then. And that gets me into a negative line of thought that is sometimes hard to break out of. Sometimes I wonder how I can use that more effectively.
Well, one of the problems a lot of the Westerners feel is the punishment of the original sin. And you may not be an active Christian, but you are still affected by that philosophy throughout the whole thing. And guilt and all the rest of the whole thing that goes with it. And if you're affected by that too long, that also affects your present situation at the same time. So indeed it becomes original sin at that point. You can't get out of it, no longer because you feel so guilty about what you've done in the past. You have no way of bailing out, so to speak, of the present situations. You've been punished forever. And one of the interesting things about introduction of a karmic situation, like 12 nidana concept, studied about that. And that main point is that present situation can be changed by present action, so that it reflects in the future situations at the same time. So you don't have to feel that you're bounded by activities of the past, but you can always renew present situation so that in the future you don't transplant further confusion. So you are the responsible of the future, basically. So that seems to be the important point. And so idea is not remorse, but take delight in your freedom, present situation, which comes with the practice.
Rinpoche, after a few months of fairly intense sitting, about 3 hours a day or so, I found that I forgot why I was sitting. I just couldn't remember. And it really bothered me at first. And I found my mind being quite academic about flip through notes and books. And then I just dropped that. I wonder if that might not, in fact, be a result of sitting. That I could forget because my concepts, in other words, the rigidity was falling away a bit. Would you agree with
Sounds
that?
Sounds
good. Yeah. Really good excuse, or
no? Keep sitting. It's sort of a natural yogi. That's pretty good. Keep on sitting. Jolly good. With that note, maybe we should close this point tonight, and I would like to also, again, needless to say, please continue your practice as good as we have done today. And study and sit. And maybe we could take a further journey tomorrow or so. So thank you for being patient, and so good. Ignite your humor, if possible. I'm sure it's possible. And cheer up and sit. Thank you.